and quiet elegance. Round tables wrapped in white linen dotted the floor. Each centerpiece a gentle swirl of pine cones, fairy lights, and winter roses. A string quartet played in the corner as employees mingled in formal wear, laughter blending with the gentle clinking of glasses. It was the company's annual employee recognition gala, and despite submitting her resignation, Evelyn had decided to attend. Not for the accolades, not for closure, but because of a promise. Laya had been counting down the days, thrilled at the idea of dressing up, seeing Uncle Nate, and eating fancy food that wasn't from a box. Evelyn had chosen a simple navy blue dress, her golden hair twisted back neatly. Laya, radiant in her beloved pink dress and little sparkly shoes, held her hand tightly as they entered the hall. No one greeted Evelyn the way they used to. The whispers had not fully died down. A few glances lingered longer than necessary, but she ignored them. Tonight, she was here for Laya. They found seats near the back, away from the spotlight. Laya swung her legs happily, sipping sparkling apple juice and pointing out the glittering lights above. At the front of the room, the MC tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage our CEO, Mr. Nathaniel Crawford." Applause followed, polite and respectful. Evelyn froze in place, her eyes lifting toward the stage as Nathaniel stepped into view. He looked calm, composed, the way he always did in public. But there was something behind his eyes tonight. Something quieter. He began his speech with ease, thanking departments, commending milestones, acknowledging achievements. Evelyn lowered her gaze, her heart thudding quietly beneath her ribs. Then it happened. Without warning, Laya slid off her chair. "Lila, wait," Evelyn whispered, reaching for her. But the child had already taken off across the floor, weaving between tables like a breeze in motion. Gasps rippled as the little girl climbed the steps of the stage, her pink dress fluttering, cheeks flushed with determination. Nathaniel turned, startled just as she reached him. She grabbed the hem of his jacket, pulled the microphone closer, and with the clarity only children seem to find, declared to the entire room, "This is the Superman who fixed the car for Mom and me. Mom and I miss him so much." A stunned silence fell over the ballroom. No one moved, no one whispered, just stillness. Evelyn froze, heat rushing to her cheeks, every nerve alive with shock and disbelief. Her hands trembled in her lap, eyes wide, lips parted. Nathaniel didn't flinch. He looked down at Laya, and something soft and unmistakably real crossed his face. He knelt beside her, wrapping her in a gentle hug. The room stayed silent, watching this unscripted moment unfold. He stood, Laya's small hand still in his, and turned back to the microphone. His voice when he spoke was quieter now, warmer. "And that's the little girl who reminded me." He paused, swallowing why we're here. "To be kind, even when no one's watching." A beat passed. Then slowly the applause began. Soft at first, then growing real. Evelyn could hardly see through the tears that welled in her eyes. She watched as Laya beamed, still holding Nathaniel's hand, waving to the crowd as if she had done nothing unusual at all. But something had shifted. The whispers were gone, replaced by something else, something beginning. The morning after the gala, the company's internal network was buzzing. Someone had uploaded a short video from the night before, grainy, shaky, and full of heart. In the clip, Laya stood center stage in her pink dress, her tiny voice ringing through the microphone. "This is the Superman who fixed the car for Mom and me. Mom and I miss him so much." Then came Nathaniel's reply, holding her hand with quiet strength. "And that's the little girl who reminded me why we're here. To be kind, even when no one's watching." The video spread fast. By lunchtime, department heads were forwarding it to their teams. Employees who once kept their distance from Evelyn now watched in silence. Some with softened expressions, others with visible regret. Something had cracked open. And from that crack came empathy. The board of directors scheduled a private meeting 2 days later. There were concerns, of course. The personal entanglements of a CEO, especially with an employee, always raised eyebrows. But after reviewing the facts, the conclusion was unanimous. There had been no breach of conduct. Nathaniel Crawford had not used his position to manipulate, pressure, or promote. If anything, he'd conducted himself with restraint. The matter was closed with no action required except one. Cynthia Monroe, her part in the rumors, once whispered, was now fully exposed. Several employees came forward, recalling things she had said, texts she had sent, emails she had implied. She was formally reprimanded by the board. Her influence within the company, once solid, began to unravel under the weight of her own bitterness. She kept her position for now, but the damage was done. And Evelyn. Cher turned to work the following Monday, not with her resignation, but with quiet dignity. Colleagues who had once avoided her offered hesitant greetings, some even apologies. She accepted them all with grace, though her trust came more slowly. But the real shift happened later that week. It was evening when Nathaniel knocked on her apartment door. Laya had already fallen asleep on the couch, her toy bear curled against her cheek. Evelyn opened the door and found him standing there, not in a suit, not with formal words, but simply there. He stepped inside, looking around the familiar space, the coat hooks crowded with scarves, the kitchen still warm from dinner. No pretense, no distance, just him. "I've said a lot of things over the past few months," he began. Some carefully worded, some not said at all. She stood across from him, hands folded tightly. "This time I want to be clear," he said. "This isn't about a gesture or a holiday dinner or even the day I fixed your car." He took a deep breath. "This time it's about a home, a real one. Not just for me, not just for you, but for all three of us." Evelyn's throat tightened. She shook her head, tears already welling. "You don't have to." "I want to," he interrupted gently. "I want to be there in the morning when Laya climbs into bed and asks for pancakes. I want to stand beside you when things get hard and when things are beautiful. I want a life with you. All of it, the ordinary and the sacred." Her breath caught. The tears spilled over, and before she could say another word, she stepped into his arms. Nathaniel held her tightly, the kind of embrace that says, "You're home now." Outside the window, snow had begun to fall again, but inside everything was finally, blessedly warm. 1 year later, the wind outside whispered through bare trees, brushing against the windows with soft wintry sighs. Snow had started falling again, gentle and steady, blanketing the quiet suburb in white. But inside the little house tucked just outside New Haven, there was warmth and laughter. The old silver sedan, the one that once stalled in the snow and brought two lives colliding, no longer roamed the streets. Instead, it sat proudly outside Evelyn's bakery, lovingly cleaned, the hood adorned with flowers in spring and fairy lights in winter. Children loved to climb inside and pretend they were going on magical journeys. Locals called it the love car. The bakery, named Laya's Table, had become a neighborhood favorite. People came not only for the flaky croissants and warm cinnamon rolls, but for the feeling that lingered in the air, hope. It was Evelyn's touch in every corner, every pastry, every smile. Nathaniel had helped fund the shop quietly without fanfare, but he let her lead, let her build it her way. It was her dream, after all. He just wanted to help it rise. Their home, not far from the bakery, was modest but filled with life. A garden bloomed in the back, and a wooden swing creaked cheerfully beneath the old maple tree. Laya had claimed the attic as her castle, filled with books and pink blankets and imagination. That morning, Evelyn stood at the kitchen counter, pouring hot water over loose-leaf tea. The smell of ginger and honey curled through the air. Nathaniel wrapped his arms around her from behind, pressing a kiss to her shoulder. Outside through the window, they watched Laya bounce down the front steps, dressed in her signature pink dress and an oversized coat. She still wore the same woolen gloves he had once left in a paper bag. They were patched now, a little frayed, but she wouldn't part with them for anything. She spotted the elderly neighbor walking her dog across the street and waved enthusiastically. Then, with the kind of joy only a 5-year-old could possess, she shouted for the whole block to hear, "My daddy is the man who fixed our car." Then Aber chuckled, lifting a gloved hand in return. Evelyn laughed softly, shaking her head. "She's still telling that story." Nathaniel tightened his arms around her waist. "It's a good story." She turned slightly, meeting his eyes. "Is it?" He leaned down, his voice a whisper in her ear. "I fixed your car that day, but you fixed my heart." Evelyn's eyes shimmered, her smile deepening as she turned fully to face him. Outside, the snow continued to fall, gently covering rooftops and gardens and parked cars. But in the little kitchen filled with the scent of tea and the sound of a little girl's laughter echoing down the street, winter had lost its chill. And somewhere in the stillness, spring had quietly arrived. A happy ending full of warmth and the kind of love that grows in silence then stays forever. Thank you for watching this. Snow has a way of quieting everything, even truth. That morning in New Haven, it fell thick and heavy, muffling the city's heartbeat in a soft white hush. Skyscrapers disappeared into fog. Streetlights blinked like tired stars. Every roof, branch, and car shimmered beneath a fresh coat of snow, hiding yesterday's footprints, forgiving yesterday's strain. Through that whiteness crawled a silver sedan, old enough to complain about every mile. Its windshield wipers squeaked out a rhythm that barely kept up with the storm, and inside sat Evelyn Harper, knuckles pale around the steering wheel, shoulders stiff with fatigue. The heater groaned weakly, tossing more noise than warmth into the air. In the back seat, her 5-year-old daughter Laya sat cocooned in pink, a puff of a coat, bright mittens, and boots that still squeaked with last week's excitement. She touched her fogged window with one mittened finger, tracing wobbly hearts and half-drawn stars. "Are we almost there, Mommy?" she asked, her voice a mix of sleep and wonder. Almost, baby, Evelyn said, glancing in the rearview mirror at her daughter's eyes, the only sunlight she seemed to have left lately. Her lips curled into a practiced smile, the kind grown-ups wear to hide worry. The sedan trembled as it pushed through icy slush. Each block sounded like a prayer wheezing from an engine that didn't believe in miracles. Evelyn whispered her own, half mechanical, half spiritual. Just get her to school, God, then get me to work. But prayers, like engines, sometimes quit mid-sentence. With a violent shudder, the car coughed, sputtered, and died. The dashboard lights blinked once in weak protest, then darkness. Please not today, Evelyn muttered, steering toward the shoulder near a flickering street lamp. Her breath fogged the windshield again, this time from frustration. Mommy, it's okay, love. The car's just being grumpy, she said, forcing cheer. Stay buckled in. I'll fix it. The cold slapped her as soon as she opened the door, a wall of wind clawing through her coat, tugging loose strands of hair. She stepped out into snow that came sideways, stinging her cheeks. Beneath the hood, the engine exhaled a sharp hiss of steam, the smell of trouble thick and metallic. Evelyn peered in at the tangled parts, her gloved fingers already numb as she poked hopelessly at cables. Cars passed, throwing slush and light, but no one stopped. Her reflection in the windshield, a woman in a coat 2 winters too old and faith 2 weeks too thin, met her gaze with quiet defiance. Behind the glass, Laya pressed her mitten against the window, small face pale with worry. Then came the sound of tires slowing behind her. Evelyn turned, heart jumping. A sleek black SUV rolled to a smooth stop. Snow hit its polished surface and slid off like it was afraid to stick. The driver's door opened. A tall man stepped out, steady, composed, the kind of calm that made chaos hesitate. His long dark coat rippled against the wind. His black gloves looked too elegant for wrenches or wires. You need a hand? His voice cut cleanly through the roaring wind. I think it's the battery, she replied, half hopeful, half embarrassed. He nodded once, efficient. And what startled her wasn't just his confidence, it was his silence. He didn't waste words. He strode past her, leaned over the hood, studied the problem with eyes that measured and solved at the same time. Then, from inside his coat, he pulled out a portable jumper pack, sleek, expensive, the kind you might see in a car commercial. Within minutes, the sedan coughed, sputtered, and came to life. Evelyn blinked, stunned. What? How? Thank you. Thank you so much. He closed the hood gently, brushed snow from his gloves. Let it idle for a bit, he said simply. His gaze slid toward the back seat where Laya waved through the fogged window. He smiled, small, real, quick, road slick. Keep her warm. And just like that, he turned back through the snow, stepping into his SUV without waiting for thanks. The black vehicle melted into the white street, vanishing as silently as it had arrived. For a moment, Evelyn just stood there, breath fogging, the humming engine behind her sounding like a heartbeat that had come back from the dead. Mommy, called a voice behind the frosted glass. She looked. Laya was leaning out the open window, face bright pink, eyes huge. That man's like a superhero, just like in my movies. Evelyn laughed shakily, heart still racing. Yeah, she murmured, climbing back inside, brushing snow from her sleeves. Maybe he is. As the heater rattled to life again and warmth crawled slowly back into the cabin, something small stirred inside her. Not certainty, but something rarer. Hope wrapped in curiosity. The next morning, Evelyn Harper walked briskly down a carpeted hallway 12 floors above the city, clutching a folder filled with neat printouts and outlines. The building hummed with the low energy peculiar to corporate mornings. Phones buzzing, elevator doors chiming, suits whispering past. She was just an assistant, one name among dozens, but today she couldn't quiet her thoughts. They looped back to that stranger on the roadside, the way he had appeared from nowhere and vanished just as quietly. His face had haunted her dreams. Half angel, half question mark. She pushed open the glass door of the executive conference room, greeting the still air of wealth and power. The long table gleamed, 12 chairs lined up like sentinels. She moved quickly, placing folders in front of each, smoothing them with careful precision. Colleagues trickled in, the familiar dance of nods, forced smiles, clinking pens. Evelyn kept her eyes low, focusing on the alignment of paper corners. Then, suddenly, a hush rippled through the room. Chairs shifted. Someone straightened their tie. She followed the silence and froze. The door had opened again. The man from yesterday walked in. Same height, same calm step, same unhurried confidence. A dark coat hung perfectly over a tailored charcoal suit. He crossed the room like someone to whom the world already belonged. Evelyn's breath caught painfully. He took the seat at the head of the table. A senior manager leaned over and whispered to the woman beside him, "That's Nathaniel Crawford, the new CEO." Evelyn stood still, a folder half open in her hands. Nathaniel Crawford. She repeated the name in her head, matching it to the man who had knelt in snow with a jumper pack. He had helped without asking, then driven away like rescue was just a habit. And now he was her boss. He looked up once, scanning the room. Their eyes met, lightning brief. A flicker of recognition crossed his face, small but unmistakable, then disappeared under professionalism as he turned to greet a director. Evelyn swallowed hard, laid down the last folder, and stepped back. Her hands trembled so badly she pressed them against her skirt to hide it. "Keep it together," she ordered herself. "He's your boss, not your miracle." The meeting began. Nathaniel spoke with calm authority, his tone rich and deliberate. There was no trace of snow or engines or that quiet roadside compassion. He was simply the CEO, confident, composed, untouchable. Evelyn said little and watched less, answering questions when asked, her voice steady only because it had to be. When the meeting finally ended, people rose in a rustle of papers and faint cologne. Evelyn lingered by the door, ready to collect folders. As Nathaniel passed, he slowed barely enough to whisper. Soft, almost secret. Glad the car made it through the rest of the day. Evelyn's head snapped up. But he was already walking down the corridor, his stride effortless, as if he hadn't just exposed the world's strangest coincidence. She stood there, heart fluttering, unsure if she'd imagined it. Outside the broad windows, snow began falling again, gentler this time, as if the sky itself was keeping their secret. The days that followed blurred into quiet rhythm. Work, laughter from the copier corner, paperwork, coffee, and sometimes the brush of familiar footsteps behind her. Nathaniel never mentioned that stormy morning again, never crossed a professional line. Yet in silent elevator rides or brief hallway exchanges, something tethered them, a glimmer of memory hiding in polite glances. He was the man who helped her without questions. She was the woman who remembered. On Saturday, snow returned in lazy spirals, painting the city back to white. Evelyn bundled Laya in her pink coat and boots. Just groceries, she told herself. No daydreams, no wondering. Bills waited on the counter, and the car rattled again when she turned the key, as if jealous of attention. "Can we see the toys, Mommy?" Laya asked, hopping through the slush, her laughter a melody in gray weather. "Only if we're quick," Evelyn replied, smiling despite the chill. The wind nipped at their faces as they neared the store. She was thinking of dinner, not destiny, until she spotted him. A man by the curb. Tall, back straight, collar turned up against the cold. Nathaniel. He stood beside a parked car, scrolling his phone, the same black coat folded neatly against the drifting snow. Before Evelyn could react, Laya gasped, eyes wide with joy, hopping in her pink boots. "That's the man who fixed our car. Mommy." Her voice rang out above the crunch of snow and passing cars. Nathaniel looked up. He crouched slightly as Isla reached him, her tiny arms clutching a pink penguin plush. "Well, hello there," he said warmly. Evelyn hurried over, cheeks flushed. "Laya, slow down." She met Nathaniel's eyes, embarrassed. "I'm sorry." She remembers everything. He smiled. Not asmirk, not amusement, just kindness. She has a good memory. "I never properly thanked you," Evelyn said. "For the other day." "You're welcome," he replied simply. They stood in silence as snow fell around them, dusting shoulders and hair. Then Nathaniel glanced toward the street. "My ride's here." He gave Laya a small wave before stepping into a black car and disappearing into traffic. Inside the store, Evelyn tried to focus. She and Laya picked up bread, pasta, a few canned goods. Passing the toy aisle, Laya stopped in front of a small display and pointed to a pink stuffed bear with sparkly ears. "Can I have this one?" she asked. Evelyn crouched, checked the price, and sighed. "Not today, sweetheart. Maybe next time." Laya nodded, brave and quiet. Outside, Nathaniel, who had lingered longer than necessary, had seen everything. Heist's expression unreadable. He turned and walked away. 10 minutes later, Evelyn and Leia stepped back into the snowy street. Wind tugged at their coats as they approached the silver sedan, now lightly blanketed in white. And then Evelyn stopped. A brown paper bag was looped over the driver's side mirror. She stared, then slowly reached up and took it down. Inside were the pink bear with sparkly ears, a small bag of groceries, a couple of sandwiches, instant noodles, a small carton of milk, 2 pairs of wool gloves, one adult-sized, one child-sized in pink. At the bottom, folded neatly, was a note. "For a warmer winter day. A man who once fixed your car. No name, no title, just that. Evelyn stood still, holding the bag close. Laya peeked inside and squealed. Mommy, it's the one I wanted. She hugged the bear tightly, her joy slicing through the cold like sunshine. Evelyn didn't speak, her throat closed, eyes stinging. She looked down the street, empty now. No black car, no tall figure, but she didn't need to see him to know. And in that quiet moment, with snow falling soft and steady, Evelyn felt something settle into her chest. Gratitude and maybe just a little bit more. After the grocery store, Evelyn didn't say a word about the note. Not to Yayla, not to anyone. She folded it gently, tucked it into the drawer beside her bed, and left it there like a secret pressed between the pages of her life. She never saw Nathaniel leave the bag, never heard a car door or footsteps, but she knew. And somehow the silence of the gesture made it even more powerful. At work, everything appeared unchanged. Nathaniel remained composed, the poised CEO, polite in hallways, sharp in meetings, never crossing any line. Evelyn followed his lead. She kept things professional, conversations brief, avoiding any trace of familiarity. She didn't want to assume, or worse, hope. Still, she noticed small things. The slight pause when she entered a room. The way he lingered in conversation if she was near. One afternoon in the cafeteria, she found an extra honey packet by the tea station, her favorite, rarely stocked. She didn't ask who left it. So when he approached her after a staff meeting on Thursday, she was surprised. He stood beside her at the refreshment table holding a paper cup. There's a little dinner gathering this Saturday. Just a few people from the office, he said casually. You should come. Evelyn blinked. Me? He nodded. Just dinner. A chance to talk outside of females and deadlines. The way he said it, light, easy, without pressure, made her feel safe enough to say yes. On Saturday evening, Evelyn arrived at the restaurant. She expected something formal, quiet, white tablecloths and business talk. But what she found was the opposite. It was a family-run Italian trattoria nestled on a quiet corner with fogged windows, and the smell of roasted garlic drifting out each time the door opened. Inside were mismatched chairs, vintage wine bottles on shelves, and soft Italian music playing from a speaker in the corner. It had warmth history. Nathaniel was already there, seated in a corner booth, wearing a dark sweater instead of his usual suit. He stood and smiled. Genuine, not corporate. I used to sit right over there, he said, gesturing to a table near the kitchen. My mom waited tables here when I was a kid. The owners let me hang out in the back while she worked double shifts. Evelyn's eyes softened. She took the seat across from him. You've been coming here long. Not since she passed, he replied gently. But tonight felt like the right time. Over steaming pasta and garlic bread, they talked not about work, but about life, childhood, struggles, regrets. I used to think being poor was something you had to hide, Evelyn admitted. Like if you stayed quiet, it wouldn't follow you into adulthood. Nathaniel nodded. My mom cleaned offices in the morning and worked here at night. Winters were brutal. Sometimes we had to choose between heat or groceries. Evelyn's throat tightened. She thought of the nights she'd driven on empty, counting quarters for gas. The evenings Leia had gone to bed with a special snack night instead of dinner. She whispered. I always thought people like you, CEOs, grew up in another world. Nathaniel held her gaze. I didn't become a CEO to forget where I came from. I became one so I'd never forget. A quiet settled between them. Deep unspoken understanding. Nathaniel leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table. I didn't help you that day to impress anyone, he said. I helped because I remember wishing someone would help my mother. Even just once, but no one ever did. Evelyn blinked fast, holding back tears. Something inside her shifted. He hadn't always stood at the top. He had once been in the cold, in the struggle. And in that moment, the space between them vanished. She wasn't just his assistant, and he wasn't just the CEO. They were two people who had known hardship, and who had found something rare and quiet in each other. By the time they left, snow had begun to fall again, soft and silent. Nathaniel held the door open, and as Evelyn stepped out into the night, she turned to look back at the little booth by the window. The warm light, the sound of laughter inside. She didn't know what would happen next, didn't dare guess where this fragile thread might lead. But for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. Something between Evelyn and Nathaniel had shifted after that quiet dinner. Not in ways the world could see. Not yet. But in the pauses between words. In the glances that lingered too long. In the way he always seemed to slow his steps when she was near. They never said anything outright. Evelyn made sure of that. She stayed professional, never letting her smile stretch too far or her gaze linger in the office. But after hours, there were walks down quiet streets, coffee shared in parked cars, and long conversations that felt like home. And there was Leia. She adored Nathaniel with the kind of wide-eyed innocence only a 5-year-old could offer. She started calling him Uncle Nate, all on her own, and he never corrected her. He picked her up when Evelyn worked late, brought books about silly animals, and learned her hot chocolate preference. Cinnamon, not marshmallows. One Sunday, they spent the afternoon building a lopsided snow fort in the park. It collapsed within minutes, and they all fell laughing. Evelyn hadn't laughed like that in years. In that moment, they weren't two different worlds. They were a family just not yet official, but not everyone saw it that way. Cynthia Monroe, head of HR, noticed everything. She saw Nathaniel pause when Evelyn entered a room. She saw the softness in his tone when he spoke to her. At first, she dismissed it, a flicker of interest, maybe even pity. Then came the whispers. Evelyn and Nathaniel were seen leaving the building around the same time. Someone claimed to have spotted them having coffee on a Saturday. Another saw him buying a pink backpack at a toy store. Cynthia didn't start the rumors, but she didn't stop them either. She let them grow, nurtured them even. "She's smart," someone said near the copier. "I heard she used to struggle, single mom and all. Guess she found a shortcut. From admin to the CEO's favorite. That's one way to move up." The rumors slid through the office like a cold draft. Quiet, chilling, impossible to ignore. Evelyn felt it quickly. Co-workers who once smiled now avoided eye contact. Lunch tables that used to save her a seat were suddenly full. Conversations stopped when she walked into a room. Someone once left a cruel message on her notepad and tore it out before she arrived. But the imprint was still there. She saw it. Cynthia stayed untouchable. Her smirk always just polite enough to avoid blame. Evelyn tried to push through. Keep her head down, do her job. But it hurt. Worse than the judgment was the fear that it would hurt Nathaniel. He had fought too hard to be where he was. She couldn't be the reason people doubted him. Late one night, long after most had gone home, Evelyn knocked on his office door. He looked up surprised. "I need to talk," she said quietly. He stood. "Of course. What's wrong?" She stepped in, closing the door behind her. "They're talking," she said. "Not just whispers anymore. People think I'm using you, that I traded my job for favors." Nathaniel's jaw clenched. "That's absurd." "It doesn't matter if it's absurd," she said. "It matters that they believe it. And I can't keep walking into work pretending it doesn't affect me or you. You haven't done anything wrong." "No," she said softly. "But this might still hurt you, and I can't live with that." He looked at her like he already knew what she was going to say. "I'm going to resign." "No," he said quickly, voice low. "I have to," she whispered. "I can't be the shadow that follows you into every meeting. You deserve better." He was silent. He didn't argue, didn't try to stop her again. But the look in his eyes, something sacred slipping through his fingers, nearly undid her. She turned before he could see her cry, and walked out of his office that night with her heart in pieces. One hand on the door, the other pressed to her chest. Behind her, Nathaniel stood motionless, surrounded by silence, holding only the echo of what might have been. The ballroom was dressed in soft gold light. Heartwarming journey of Evelyn, little Laya, and the man who once fixed their car, Nathaniel Crawford. This wasn't just a story about a broken-down vehicle on a snowy road. It was a story about healing hearts, building a home, and love that bridges every distance. If this story touched your heart, if you believe that quiet kindness can change a life, hit that hype button to show your support, and subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories for more emotional, uplifting tales that warm your soul and stay with you long after they end. Until next time, stay kind, stay hopeful.